being called a snitch came from Suge. Suge told Tupac to say that about me. But Suge was a capitalist. He used Pac. Pac didn't even see it.
We find ourselves staring at Jacques Agnant, a man who once stalked the night in Brooklyn with the confidence of a wolf king, now sitting in the sun-drenched calm of the Dominican Republic, far from the crackling energy of East Flatbush or the paranoia of 1990s Manhattan. Palm trees wave behind him, and in the digital glow of a Gully TV interview, he tells anyone listening that the stories are wrong. He grins, relaxed, still stylish, still insisting, "I don't rob or end my friends. We got a problem, we go our separate ways." It sounds reasonable, maybe even gentle, but to the hip-hop world, this is just another tired refrain from a man who, whether he likes it or not, has already been tried and found guilty by fans, by rappers, by the entire culture. We all know the story, or at least the version told on street corners and in endless documentaries. Haitian Jack, the man who once put holes in quite a few people, is also the man who wore Shakur's stolen jewelry, necklaces, shining and bloody with meaning, hours after the infamous Quad Studios ambush.
Bro had a big mouth too. He was talking a lot of shit too. He was talking a whole lot of shit, and sometimes niggas is like they gonna get at you when you talking shit. They gonna get at you, bro. You feel me? And far as the situation, I know, you know, it supposed to be some shit between him and Haitian Jack and some jewelry or some shit like that or whatever it was, you know. And Biggie was telling, bro, you don't even fuck with that nigga, you know what I mean?
The legend is so embedded in hip-hop DNA that it barely qualifies as rumor anymore. Haitian Jack didn't just rob Shakur, the whisper goes. He orchestrated the whole hit. The image is indelible. While Shakur was bleeding out in a New York hospital, Jack was supposedly in a nightclub, laughing, wearing the chains ripped off Shakur's neck. Every time Jack sits for an interview, it feels like he's testifying at a trial where the verdict was written decades ago. And every line he delivers, every boast about being raised by wolves, only deepens the mystery, because this is the same wolf who trained Shakur in the first place, the same one who showed him how to walk, how to dress, how to handle the real Brooklyn. But for all the chest thumping, we can't shake the image of those jewels, that post-shooting night, and the unbreakable rumor that Jack was not just Shakur's mentor, but his ultimate betrayer. Let's roll back the clock and trace how a boy from Haiti became the shadow king of East Flatbush. The story starts with Jacques Agnant's family fleeing economic catastrophe and arriving in Brooklyn, an era when the streets had rules, but the only people enforcing them were the ones writing them in blood. Haitian Jack never hid his ambitions. He wanted the kind of respect that, as he put it, the Jamaican crews had. The respect that came from fear. The more he said it outright, the respect they got is the respect that I wanted. That yearning turned into a career, if you can call it that, built on intimidation and spectacle. By the late 1980s, Jack was making more money shaking down corner boys than most rappers would ever see from record deals. Even his own father, in one particularly twisted family moment, called him King of the Thieves after Jack tracked down and retrieved stolen property.
You know, and I had known Jack through Scooter, and I used to say, "You out of your league," you know.
You hang with the big boys now.
Yeah, you out of your league.
But the streets weren't just about violence. They were about politics and networking, and that's how Jack found himself at the center of a new empire. He became the man party promoters wanted at their events, the one DJs saluted, the guy Madonna called when she wanted to feel dangerous. It's not hyperbole. Jack really did have Madonna eating jerk chicken in Brooklyn. He was everywhere at the height of his powers, surrounded by future legends, Big U, Bimmy Antony, Trick. These weren't just fellow hustlers, they were fellow power brokers who saw Jack as one of the originals. There are moments in hip-hop uncovered where you can see even hardened street veterans defer to him. And then, in 1993, in the haze of Atlanta's studio scene during the filming of Above the Rim, Jack met a rising star with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove: Shakur. From that first handshake, everything changed. Jack took Shakur under his wing, not in a mentor-mentee after-school special way, but with a shopping spree. Suddenly, Shakur was wearing Versace, rocking a Rolex, thanks to Jack's lessons in style and street presence. But this was more than a glow-up. Jack introduced Shakur to the Brooklyn underworld, gave him the credibility he'd only dabbled in until then. "I used to dress in baggies and sneakers. They took me shopping. That's when I bought my Rolex and all my jewels," Shakur later told Vibe from his cell in Rikers. "Thing made me mature. They introduced me to all these gangsters in Brooklyn." To Shakur, Jack was both a lifeline and a role model, one who knew how to survive in rooms full of wolves.
Humans are not just good and bad, black and white. They're compassionate at times. They're sexist at times. A man can be sexist and compassionate to women at the same time. I was. Look at the lunatic and look at Brenda's got a baby.
But every fairy tale in hip-hop turns ugly, and this one curdled fast. November 18, 1993, the Parker Meridian Hotel, Midtown Manhattan. Shakur, Jack, and a handful of others all swept up in a case that would end up changing lives and rewriting rap history. Ayanna Jackson, a 19-year-old woman, alleged that she was assaulted in Shakur's hotel room that night. It wasn't a simple situation. Shakur claimed everything started consensually, that he left the room before anything happened, that Biggie Smalls had even been around earlier that night. The details still twist and morph depending on who you ask, but when the dust settled and the court made its ruling, something strange had happened. Haitian Jack's charges just disappeared. He walked away, no handcuffs, no press, nothing. Shakur, he got first-degree misconduct abuse, sentenced to Rikers in February 1995, an infamous entry in the history of America's most brutal lockups. Same night, same room, same crime. Only one man got sent upstate. To Shakur, the message was clear as glass and sharp as a shank. In that same Vibe interview, Shakur didn't hold back. He let his attorneys turn him against me. For Shakur, it was the ultimate betrayal, and he began telling friends that Jack had to be a federal informant, the only way anyone walked away from a case like that in Jack's world. The paranoia was justified, or at least understandable. Rikers wasn't just a jail, it was a place where men broke, where even stars like Harvey Weinstein and Sid Vicious found themselves covered in filth and left to rot. For Shakur, trapped in those conditions, every slight from Jack became a conspiracy, every absence proof of guilt.
All the records that I heard were like all one-sided, but I'm an actor and I was a poet, so I felt like if my story is to be believable, I have to tell the multifaceted nature of a human being.
The paranoia wasn't just his own either. The streets were whispering. Jack had switched sides, sold Shakur out to the feds, or worse, to his enemies. Even Suge Knight and Mike Tyson were warning Shakur to be careful who he trusted in New York. And then, just when the tension couldn't get any thicker, everything exploded. November 3rd, 1994, Quad Recording Studios, Times Square. It's supposed to be a normal night. Shakur is headed there with Stretch, Zayd, and Fred, about to lay down a verse, maybe make some money on the side. But when they hit the lobby, it turns into a war zone. Two men in army fatigue step up, faces hard, guns out. They don't just rob Shakur, they zero in on him, ignoring the muscle, going straight for the jewelry. He won't hand it over. Shots ring out, 5 bullets, 2 in the head, 2 in the groin, 1 in the thigh. Upstairs, Puffy, Biggie, and Andre Harrell are waiting, oblivious or playing dumb, depending on who you believe. Downstairs, Shakur is left for gone, somehow surviving, half crawling to the elevator. But here's the part that made every conspiracy theorist's job easy. Within hours, someone spots Haitian Jack in a club, beaming, flashing the same gold chains ripped from Shakur's body. The jewelry itself wasn't worth as much as what it stood for. To everyone who mattered, the meaning was clear. Jack hadn't just let Shakur get ambushed. He'd signed off on it, maybe even called the play. Suddenly, all those earlier rumors about snitching, about informant status, about turning on Shakur, crystallized into a foundational myth. Even if Jack kept denying it, even if he could spin 100 tales about loyalty and street code, it didn't matter. The visual contrast was too sharp. Shakur in a hospital bed, stitches in his head, haunted by nightmares, while Jack lived it up, legend intact, grinning for the camera. This wasn't just a street beef anymore. It was the birth of an epic feud and the funeral bell for the last real friendship either of them would ever have.
And you can see the lessons that I missed when you talk to me. You can see where I haven't had a father when you talk to me. You know what I'm saying? You can see where I spent a lot of my time in the streets when you talk to me. Because the words that I say are not words that come from a mother's mouth or a father's mouth. It's words that comes from a pimp's mouth or a hustler or a dealer.
By the time 1995 rolled in, Shakur was caged at Rikers Island, swapping Versace for government-issue sweats and writing letters from a cell that reeked of sewage and betrayal. The air in New York's most infamous lockup was thick with rodents and tension. Shakur's mind fared no better. He was granting interviews, venting his venom and suspicion. For the first time, he named names in the pages of Vibe. He told us how Nigel, his coded alias for Haitian Jack, had introduced me to all these gangsters in Brooklyn, pulling him deep into a world he'd only rapped about before. But that quote wasn't just nostalgia, it was an indictment. Shakur, speaking through the iron bars, made it clear. Nigel took me to Nell's, and then the setup came. The timing was brutal. His confessions hit the stands just as Me Against the World dropped, and suddenly Haitian Jack wasn't just a rumor in the street. He was the most wanted villain in the rap game, the living face of everything Shakur warned us about in his records.
Boom, it's all over. And we can see, how this shit fall, but that's how it is. And the reason being is because if I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here. Because God has cursed me to see what life should be like.
Haitian Jack, for his part, kept busy rewriting the story from across the water. In Hip Hop Uncovered, he tried to flip the script, telling anyone with a camera that Shakur let his attorneys turn him against me. Jack framed himself as the loyal friend, the ride or survive who got abandoned when the bright lights and tabloids came calling. But let's be real. By this point, almost nobody believed him. Not the fans, not even his old crew. It was like watching two alternate universes collide. Shakur's righteous fury on one side, Jack's deflections on the other. No matter how many times Jack said he wasn't the type to betray a friend, it never landed. The streets had made up their minds. In the court of hip-hop opinion, Jack's version had already been tossed out as fantasy. As the records kept spinning and the violence grew, the line between the music business and street justice blurred until it was all one big game with no rulebook. The night Suge Knight bailed Shakur out of prison for $1.4 million. It wasn't just a headline. It was the moment the West Coast took possession of the most explosive figure in rap. Shakur traded the grime of Rikers for the black and red empire of Death Row Records, and with Suge by his side, the feud went national. Meanwhile, Jack was still king of the East Coast after hours scene, a regular at parties where every handshake felt like a potential conspiracy. He orbited the likes of Jimmy Henchman and kept ties with Bad Boy Entertainment, a detail that would only grow more suspicious as the body count rose.
I believed him because he wasn't talking just to be talking. I felt he was also coming straight because there was a big war behind that. A war that they lost. And I think it was a war that destroyed their neighborhood.
The tension between the coasts wasn't just in the music, it was in the news. Jack himself recalled being at Jermaine Dupri's birthday party in 1995, the same night Suge Knight's right-hand man Jake Robles lost his life after an argument with Puffy's crew. Coincidence? Maybe, but that pattern kept repeating. Whenever the drama escalated, whenever bullets started flying or alliances shifted, Jack's name was always just off stage. Like a character who keeps walking into the background of a crime scene. Even the other power brokers of Hip Hop Uncovered, Big U, Bimmy, Trick, couldn't talk about the era without Jack's shadow crossing the lens. If you listened closely, you could hear it. Jack was never just an observer. He was a fixed point in a constantly shifting war. Through the late 90s and early 2000s, as the East Coast-West Coast feud left more questions than answers, Jack's notoriety only grew. When he finally tripped up in LA, caught in the fallout of a nightclub shooting in 2004, the legend got another layer. He served time, lost his visa, and in 2007 was booted from the United States for good. Now, instead of Manhattan's clubs or Brooklyn's streets, he surveys his kingdom from the safety of the Dominican Republic. A paradise on paper, but more like a velvet-lined prison if you know the backstory. We see him on social media, surrounded by sleek cars and designer clothes, posing with the bravado of a man who once owned the night. But the old bravado doesn't land like it used to. The only real currency he has left is infamy.
Yeah, man, and you do have some people that feel like Haitian Jack, he's the one that sent her to do that. And you got some people that feel like he was behind the Quad Studios situation too.
I mean, you know, basically was hating on Pac, bro. You know what I mean? They, you know, was hating on Pac, bro. You know what I'm saying? And you know, Pac was going big too. You feel me? You understand too. Bro had a big mouth too.
Lately, Jack's been doing the rounds again, protesting that journalists rewrote history and that the streets got the story wrong. But we know the real story didn't start on YouTube, and it won't end on Instagram. There's a reason his name pops up every time some detective or documentarian dusts off the old files about Shakur's Las Vegas drive-by. Retired LAPD detective Greg Kading, who worked the case for years, still puts Jack in the circle of East Coast players whose connections went deeper than what made it onto the albums. Jack's always got a new theory to share, a new reason why he couldn't have done what everyone thinks he did. But every explanation just makes the legend darker, the suspicion sharper.
I felt like, you know, they had like, you know, a whole lot of potential. Jay was more quiet. But I mean, I learned that Jay was being quiet because he was taking notes. He was taking notes, observing everything, taking it all in. You know, because, you know, sometimes you're around and you're watching to see things to do.
If we want to understand the full depth of Jack's game, we have to talk about his unlikely mid-1990s romance with Madonna, a relationship that blurred every line between celebrity and street cred. Madonna was at her most untouchable, the queen of pop, running circles around the paparazzi and hunting for new danger to accessorize her image. Jack gave her that, late-night rides to Brooklyn, jerk chicken and street parties packed with figures most pop stars would only see in headlines. For a while, it was the ultimate status exchange. She made him look legitimate, he gave her an air of forbidden edge. It was all theater, but the street-level reactions were real. Even local rapper Spliff Star admitted he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Madonna walking among real wolves, apparently unaware she was now starring in a crime saga that wasn't written for the stage. Jack never created the legends. He found ways to orbit around them, to reflect their light and make it look like his own. In Madonna's world, he became the dangerous mystery. In the streets, he was the guy who got Madonna eating off a paper plate in Flatbush. His power wasn't built on beats or bars, it came from reflection, the skill of amplifying proximity into legend. For Jack, each brush with fame was a new mask, a fresh story to tell the next interviewer. Their heart was into it, like it was for Madonna. She's Angel, which is her. But those reflections were always fragile. The minute the celebrity lost interest or the story moved on, Jack was left with nothing but the myth he tried to polish. One step removed from the real action, but always on the scene.
Yeah. I mean, it was like with some people they didn't, like the flow. With some people they didn't like the image. It differed, but nevertheless we couldn't make it happen.
That pattern would define his life and legacy. While Madonna's career hit new heights and her flings with danger faded into trivia, Jack was left haunted by the roles he once played. Everyone else could reinvent themselves, move on, and outgrow the old rumors. Only Jack seemed trapped, replaying the same defenses, insisting that he'd been misunderstood, even as he continued to live like the villain the world now expected. His relationship with Madonna was never about love or even partnership. It was a transaction. Danger traded for legitimacy, clout traded for narrative. In the end, it was just another mirror shattered, another story Jack couldn't rewrite. Shakur never got to clear his own name. Gunned down in 1996 at just 25, he became what he always feared. Another artist whose value exploded the minute his story was cut short. Jack, on the other hand, is still here, still breathing, still telling anyone who'll listen that he was the real friend, the misunderstood soldier who got caught in the crossfire of someone else's vendetta. But history is a cruel judge. Shakur became immortal, Jack became a warning, and the chain that went missing in the Quad Studios shooting, while it became the single most radioactive piece of jewelry in hip-hop, more powerful as rumor than any diamond or gold ever could be.
You said, hey, I just want to be alive. That's real for you.
That's so real. I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person today because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I could represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died.
Now, decades later, we're left with a question that haunts every late-night argument, every true crime thread, every anniversary playlist. Did Haitian Jack really betray Shakur only once, or is his real betrayal the fact that he never understood how his own words, his endless self-defense, turned him into the villain the culture needed? In the end, Shakur is a legend because he stopped talking and started living in our imaginations. Jack is just a headline that won't fade, a man trying to escape the echo of a story he can never rewrite. What do you think? Was Haitian Jack the architect of Shakur's downfall, or just the scapegoat for hip-hop's most tragic legend? Drop your wildest theories in the comments. Until next time, keep your ears open and your friends closer. This is the saga that never sleeps.